$400 million. That's what it cost to build one theme park. Empty dirt to opening day coasters, a soundtrack, themed everything. $400 million of it. It opened in the spring of 2008. It ran for one summer. 5 months later, it filed for bankruptcy. And the whole thing, every coaster, every ride, every acre of it was later sold for about $25 million. That's the price of a nice house. For a park that cost $400? Now, the easy story is that somebody was a fool. But hold on to that number, because we're going to come back to it, and by the time we do, it won't look like foolishness at all. It'll look like physics. Here's the thing you're supposed to believe about a business like this. You sell tickets, millions of them, every year. 20,000 people, some days, pouring through the gates, and every one of them paying to get in. A business that popular cannot possibly lose money. Except it can, quietly and completely. Because this was never really an entertainment business. It's a machine that eats its own profits to stay alive, and the day you stop feeding it, it starts to die, before you even notice. Let me show you the machine. When you buy a theme park, you think you're buying a park, a place, land, rides, a gate, a logo. You're not. You're buying an obligation. A standing, permanent, non-negotiable obligation to build a new reason for people to come back over and over, for as long as you own it. The rides you bought aren't the asset. They're the down payment on the next set of rides, and that bill never stops arriving. So the day you sign, your future splits into 3 roads, and you don't get to pick which one you're on. That gets decided later, by the machine. On the first road, you outrun it. You keep building, the crowds keep coming, the profits keep funding the next thing, and the whole flywheel spins faster than the bills. A handful of parks on Earth live here. On the second road, you tread water. You reinvest just enough to hold the line. You never quite fall, you never quite win. You just keep the machine fed and call it a good year. And on the third road, the machine grinds you under. Not because you were lazy, not because nobody came, because the math turned against you faster than you could turn it back. Keep those 3 roads in your head. We're going to end up on all 3 before this is over. First, we have to break a word. Because theme park is one of those words that hides a dozen completely different businesses inside it. At one end, there's the destination resort. Disney World, Universal. These aren't attractions, they're small cities. Multiple parks, tens of thousands of hotel rooms, their own transit, their own water treatment. You don't visit for an afternoon. You fly in, you stay a week, and the whole economy is built around capturing every dollar of that week. In the middle, there's the regional Iron Park, the place 2 hours from a major city that lives and dies on roller coasters and season passes. Its customer isn't a tourist on a trip. It's a family that comes 4 times a summer and expects something new to have appeared since last year. And at the small end, there's the seasonal park and the family entertainment center, the boardwalk, the pier, the place that's only fully alive for 100 days a year and has to earn its entire annual income in one warm, narrow window. These are not the same business. They fail in different ways, they make money in different ways, and the era matters too. A park built in 1971, when land near a city was cheap and a wooden coaster was a marvel, is playing a completely different game than one breaking ground today, where the audience has a phone in its pocket, and its expectations were set by a $300 million ride it saw on that phone last week. But every single one of them, the resort, the Iron Park, the pier, is chained to the same machine. So let's walk into the gate and start counting. Start with the thing you actually see, the rides. A serious roller coaster is not a playground toy. A real one, steel, tall, fast. The kind that anchors a summer's marketing runs anywhere from a few $1 million to 25 or 30 million. For the coaster alone, just the ride, before you've poured a foot of path around it, and a coaster is the cheap option. The moment you want a story instead of a drop, a dark ride, indoors, with a track that pulls you through a built world, animation, sound, a ride system that does more than fall, you leave the coaster's price behind entirely. A sophisticated dark ride starts around 40 million and climbs past 100, and when you bolt a famous name onto it, the ceiling comes off. The biggest of these, the ones built around a blockbuster franchise, the ones designed to be a reason to fly across an ocean, have reportedly cost $300, $400, $500 million for one building. One ride, in one building, costing more than most companies are worth. Let that land. And here's the part the ticket price never tells you. None of that is the expensive part, because underneath the rides is the thing nobody photographs, the ground itself. 20,000 people on a hot day need water to drink, to flush, to cool. They need power for every motor and every freezer. They need somewhere to put 10,000 cars. And every one of those people generates waste that has to be treated before it leaves your property. You are not building an attraction. You're building a utility company that happens to have roller coasters on top. So you sign the checks, the rides go up, the pipes go in, the gates open, and now you own it. Now the real machine switches on. Here's the mechanism. This is the whole video, so slow down with me. You would think, once the park is built, that attendance is a fact. You made a nice park, people know it's there. A predictable number of them show up each year. A stock you can count on. It isn't a stock, it's a function. And the variable that drives it is one you might not guess. When did you last open something new? The industry has watched this happen for decades. A major new attraction lands, and in its first year, it can lift attendance by something like 8 to 15%. People who hadn't come in years suddenly have a reason. The lapsed family renews the pass. The crowd swells. And then if you build nothing else, it recedes. Not in a crash, in a drift. A slow, quiet leak, a few percent a year. So gentle that you can tell yourself it's the weather, or the economy, or a bad news cycle. The crowd is not really a crowd. It's a memory of the last new thing you gave them, and memories fade on a schedule. Now, I want to be honest about the numbers here, because you'll see very confident percentages thrown around a new ride is worth exactly this much lift, decline sets in at exactly that rate. The truth is, those figures are ranges, not laws, and they swing with the park, the market, the year, but the direction is not in dispute. Skip the reinvestment cycle long enough, and attendance softens. Every operator knows it in their bones, which is why the spending never stops. The estimates argue about how fast the floor drops. Nobody argues about which way it's tilted. So look at what that does to your profit. You have a good year, real money, left over at the end, and you cannot keep it. Because the moment you pocket it, instead of plowing it back into the next attraction, you've started the drift. The good year is the fuel for the next good year. The profit doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the ground you're standing on. It goes back into the ground. And now the first twist. Because at this point you're thinking, fine, but the tickets, millions of tickets. Surely that ocean of admission money covers all this. It barely covers the lights. Look at where the money actually comes from. At the big operators, the gate admissions, the ticket itself makes up somewhere around 60% of park revenue. That sounds like a lot until you realize what it's paying for. The staff, the power, the insurance, the maintenance, the endless fixed cost of simply opening the doors each morning. The ticket is not the profit. The ticket is the cover charge. It buys you a customer standing inside your park with an empty stomach and a wallet. The actual business begins after the turnstile. It's the churro and the bottled water. It's the plush toy your kid will not leave without. It's the photo of your face on the big drop, the line you skip for an extra fee, the meal you didn't pack. Per person, at a mid-size park, that in-park spending runs somewhere in the range of $50 to $60 a head, and a big chunk of it is pure food and merchandise. The highest margin things in the building. That's the flip inside the flip. The ride you spent $30 million on doesn't make money. It's bait. It exists to put a human being in a good mood, in a warm place, next to something for sale. The coaster is the cost. The pretzel is the profit. Which means the whole operation is even more fragile than it looks. Because your real income doesn't depend on how many tickets you sell. It depends on how happy, how long, and how hungry each guest is once they're inside, and every one of those is downstream of that expensive new ride you can never stop building. Now let's go down to the second floor of costs. The ones with no advertising value at all. The ones that just bleed. Start with maintenance, and understand how it's actually metered. A roller coaster doesn't age by the calendar. It ages by the operating hour. Every cycle is a load on the steel. The wheels, the brakes, the chain. So the maintenance isn't a tune-up you do now and then. It's a running tax on the very thing you want most, which is a busy ride. Industry rule of thumb puts annual maintenance somewhere around 10 to 15% of a ride's value every year. A single wooden coaster can eat 6 figures a year in track work alone. One park has spoken of well over $100,000 a year just replacing wood on one ride. The more people love it, the more it costs to keep it standing. And every morning, before a single guest arrives, someone walks that entire track, on foot, looking for a crack, a loose bolt, rust, debris, anything, because if they find it, the ride closes. Minutes, days, however long it takes. That's not a suggestion. That's the deal. One flaw, and your $30 million asset earns nothing until it's fixed. Then there's the insurance. You are inviting 20,000 strangers to be flung through the air on machines, and you are legally responsible for all of them. Liability coverage for a large park can run into 6 figures a month. Call it $150,000 every month, before anyone has ridden anything. A pure fixed cost that does not care whether you had a good day, and it does not care about the sky, either. Which brings us to the cruelest input of all, the weather. A theme park earns its year in a narrow window: the warm months, the school break, the holiday weekends. Miss those, and there is no making them up. So a single rainy summer can quietly erase your strongest quarter, and there is nothing on the balance sheet you can do about it. Now, I want to be careful here, because this one is genuinely argued over. Look closely, and you'll find studies suggesting that across a whole season, weather barely moves the annual total. The sunny days and the washouts roughly cancel, and people just shift which day they come. On any single rainy afternoon, the park looks empty, and everyone swears weather is everything, but zoom out to the year, and the signal gets murky. So the honest version isn't rain destroys parks. It's sharper than that. The danger isn't the average summer. It's the bad one, landing on the wrong window, a storm parked over your single biggest week, against a cost base that's almost entirely fixed. The rides cost the same in the rain. The insurance bill's the same in the rain. That's the exposure, not the drizzle. The concentration. Let me show you the 2 roads with 2 operators. Same park, same town, same machine. Different choices. The first one understands the deal. Every good year, they take the profit and they bury it: new ride, new land, new reason to renew the pass. It feels insane from the outside. They're profitable and they're spending it all, but their attendance holds. It even climbs. The in-park spending stays fat because the guests stay happy and keep coming back. They're on the first road, the one where the flywheel outruns the bills. It never feels safe. There's always another $20 million hole in the ground, but it works. The reinvestment is the moat. The second operator is more reasonable. That's the trap. They look at that same profit and they think, correctly, that it's theirs. They earned it, so they keep it. Maybe they've got investors who want the cash out now. Maybe they just want to feel, for once, like the thing they built is finished. Nothing bad happens the first year. That's the poison. The park still looks full. The numbers still look fine. So they do it again the next year. And somewhere in there, invisibly, the drift begins. A little softer this summer. The lapsed family doesn't come back, because there's nothing new to come back for. In-park spending sags because the crowd is thinner and less delighted. And by the time it's obvious in the numbers, it's already years deep because attendance fell before it was ever visible. That's the machine's cruelest trick. The punishment for skipping a payment doesn't arrive when you skip it. It arrives later, compounded, disguised as bad luck. That second operator never made a dramatic mistake. They just stopped feeding it, and it started to die. Before they noticed, it goes back into the ground, or it takes you down with it. Those are the terms. And if you think that only happens to small, careless operators, here's the one that should end the argument. Imagine the most capable theme park company that has ever existed. The one that basically invented the modern version of this business. The one with the characters everyone on Earth already loves, the deepest bench of talent, more experience than anyone alive. Now hand them a brand new park in one of the most visited regions in the world. They nearly went bankrupt. When Disney opened its Paris resort in the early 90s, the venture lost something on the order of $1 billion in its first 18 months. It had been built on close to $2 billion of borrowed money, and the interest on that debt didn't care how magical the park was. Attendance came in under the dream. Guests spent less than the model assumed. And the machine did exactly what it does. It demanded to be fed, while the debt demanded to be served. And for a while, there simply wasn't enough to do both. It took emergency restructuring and a Saudi prince putting in hundreds of millions of dollars to keep the gates open. Sit with that. The single best operator in the history of the industry, with the strongest brand on the planet, was nearly ground under, not by a rival, not by a scandal, but by the same structural force that governs the smallest peer. Build cost up front, debt to carry it. A machine underneath that must be fed regardless. That's the third road, and it will take the master as readily as the amateur. Now, go back to that $400 million park from the very beginning. It didn't fail because the owners were stupid. It opened straight into a collapsing economy with a mountain of build cost and no time to feed the machine before the machine came due. The fixed costs didn't flinch. The debt didn't flinch. And 5 months was all it took. $400 million of steel, auctioned for the price of a house, not because nobody wanted a theme park, but because a theme park is almost impossible to stop owning gracefully, which is the last cost, and the one nobody warns you about. So here's the flip. Here's the machine, finally, in full. You thought you were buying an entertainment business, a place that sells fun by the ticket? You're not. Selling tickets is just the cover charge. The thing you actually bought, the day you signed, was an obligation. A permanent, standing obligation to manufacture a fresh reason for people to come back and to buy that reason in cash every few years, forever. The rides aren't the product. The reason to return is the product. And unlike a normal product, you can't make it once. It decays. The novelty you sold last time is worth less this time, because the guest has already ridden it, already photographed it, already told their friends. So the machine's real job, the only job that keeps attendance alive, is to keep buying back its own relevance from a public that forgets on a schedule. That's why even the giants can't stop. Look at what's happening right now, at the very top of the industry. One company spent something like $7 billion on a single new park. Another has pledged $60 billion toward its parks and experiences over roughly a decade. $60 billion. These are the winners. They are printing money. And they are shoveling it back into the ground as fast as it comes out, not because they're reckless, but because they understand the deal better than anyone. The day the building stops, the dying starts. That's the drumbeat, and now it means something new. All video I've been telling you the profit goes back into the ground. I meant the money, but that's not the whole of it. Eventually, the park itself goes back into the ground. Every ride you build is already depreciating, already aging by the hour, already becoming the old thing you'll have to replace. You're not accumulating assets. You're renting relevance from time, and the rent is due forever. Which raises the question nobody asks until it's too late. What if you want out? You can sell a house. You can sell a factory. Someone else can make something different in it. But what, exactly, is a theme park worth to anyone who isn't going to run it as a theme park? The land, maybe. The scrap value of the steel, almost nothing else. A custom roller coaster is engineered for one spot on Earth. It is not a thing you fold up and sell across the country. A themed dark ride built around a specific story is worth a fraction of its cost to anyone who doesn't own that story. The moment the park stops being a going concern, the moment the machine goes cold, most of that value evaporates. It doesn't transfer. It just disappears. That's why a park that cost $400 million sold for 25. That wasn't a bargain someone stole. That was the real number. That was what $400 million of specialized, single-purpose, depreciating spectacle is worth the day the crowds stop and the machine won't restart. The entry price is enormous, and the exit price is brutal. And in between, you owe capital forever. There is no clean way in and no clean way out. There's only the feeding. So when you picture owning the happiest place in town, understand what you're really signing up for. Not a windfall. A treadmill, a beautiful, beloved, roaring treadmill that turns your profit back into concrete year after year and hands you almost nothing you could ever sell. And here's where I'm supposed to tell you it's a scam. That the whole thing is a trap, that only a fool would want it. But that's not true either, and pretending it is would be its own kind of lie. Because the machine is real and the magic is real. Both things. Somewhere out there right now, 20,000 people are having one of the best days of their year, in a place someone had the nerve to build. The dreamer who signs that check isn't a fool. They know, or they learn, that the profit goes back into the ground. They do it anyway, because what they're buying was never really an asset on a balance sheet. It's the thing the balance sheet can't hold. Just don't confuse it with a business that sells tickets. It doesn't. It sells a reason to come back and then spends everything it earns buying that reason again, forever. You never really buy a theme park. You buy the obligation to keep building one. And the day you stop the machine and the ground, quietly take it back. If that flip changed how you'll look at the next park you walk into, you already know what to do. Because the next question is the one that runs every business you think you understand, and I'll show you that machine next.